to get this whole debate raised from the EU, from the Petitions Committee of the EU Parliament to the whole of the Parliament and to the Council. And that it means not to be apathetic, but to give this political democracy a chance. So I'd like to go for it. I'd like to invite you to not just follow, but become active, please. And we are here to help each other. I would like to create kind of networking buddies and networking partners amongst each other, that we don't feel alone, that we don't feel we are on our own. So Debbie, if you could just to go. Be as eloquent as you always are on your wonderful videos as well. It was an absolute pleasure to put your real face in now to our Skype conversations, and thank you for having come down to Sheffield, and thank you for bringing another technobody along.
Debbie got lost somewhere in the back streets of Camden. So,
oh really?
I don't think got lost. So we haven't got Debbie.
Oh, I thought I left here. Oh.
Klaus Sinter, maybe?
Klaus, is
I'm here, yeah. Can you hear me?
Klaus, just add what you want to add after what I said.
Well, at the moment I can't say much. I'm watching the I watched the video. It was not very good, so I'm not sure what I missed, what I got. I was looking what happened at the embassy. In the evening now there were two pictures of Mami who was there. My personal experience is, Sabine, you know a little, others don't know. Only pressure will help, and I experienced a lot with what I've seen what Max Schrems has done, a completely different subject, but at the end he managed to bring the case to Luxembourg and to the Luxembourg court, which is very difficult, and there he was able to put a lot of pressure. I try to do the same on the other side. What I see, we are really helpless, but we need to put pressure.
Actually, John Henning has already said at some stage as well, we may have a case for Luxembourg, and he ends up talking to the MEPs today as well. So let's hope, let's hope that will be fruitful. John Henning has just recently discovered that 31% of all children in care are actually being adopted, whereas the government has always quoted 7%, which I find as the most outrageous lie.
31% of children in care are adopted?
Yes, that's what he put on his latest post on his blog.
I saw the blog today.
Yeah. Yes, and it is a critical figure in it. And it is quite extraordinary because the whole report that Claire Fenton-Gill produced on behalf of the Petitions Committee, which he called, was the whitewash, and where you keep pointing out that we need to question it. It's one of the issues we need to pursue. But we have a lot of MEPs on our side, contrary to MPs in the UK.
There are 2 points. One is, I sent it out, Mami was referring in a court decision from 2nd November on the Fenton-Gill report, which is incorrect. You need to look at this. And there is a second one, and that was funny for me because Max Schrems, I'm really done, Max Schrems managed to get to Luxembourg, the European Court, because of the European Charter of Fundamental Rights, and not just because of violation of European Union law, what happened in my case, it was a violation of the Charter of Fundamental Rights, and there is a guide I need to look, and there is a paper from because they say the Charter of Fundamental Rights in in UK is not valid. It means the Charter of Fundamental Rights is not Strasbourg Fundamental Rights, and they say partially it's not valid in UK, but all the other European countries except Poland and UK. But there was a paper from the UK government from last year where they say it's valid, but I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know how important who can look at it, but that's also something we need to keep in mind.
I know that the chairman of the Petitions Committee, Swedish MEP Cecilia Wikström, she refers to it, and in the report that Rachel Royce from the BBC produced, and Rachel was with us today, and she will be in touch with the MEPs in Europe House as well. So we can put it before them. That's a very good point, Klaus.
I have sent it a few weeks. Yeah.
I think I'm here maybe outside. I'll just see what I can send her. Okay?
The door.
Okay, I put it on the speed. Wait a second. Just a side issue. There are a lot of trees under Petty Fact-Finding Forced Adoption UK. So if someone is searching for information, there is also this one link to this UK paper deciding from the government saying, hey, what's valid and what's not valid. But I can send you an email on it also.
Yes, we need to find, well, or if you send it as a comment to on the McKinsey site blog post, that would even be better, Klaus.
As a comment, say it again, on the blog?
Comment on the website of the McKinsey Friends.
Okay, I will.
That would be good, thank you.
I will add it, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. Now we go ahead with that, yeah.
Yeah, it's got the message. I mean, I told her to, but if otherwise, Belinda, you just. Well, I suppose that's for Dynamics, huh?
Well, it's trying to follow a kind of sequence with the speakers, going along with sort of course on the, in our display on the wall. So, ending with what we might call the elephant in the room last, right? And then running against parallel. So it would be nice to be able to carry on with the EU side of things, or political side of things at this stage if we can, but we've lost Debbie. I don't know what did she. Well, anyway. Perhaps I can talk a little bit about just 5 minutes about my campaign and hope that Debbie turns up. Because in the earlier session we were looking for remedies, and Ian Joseph was particularly eloquent about remedies, wasn't he? And I also have been trying to find something positive that we can do that will somehow attract the public in a way that this topic tends to repel the public. So if we can have a sort of campaign which is going to actually infuse the public so that they become aware of the issue, but at the same time immediately there's a remedy and something very practical they can do. And the idea came to me earlier this year when I heard talk of the Human Rights Act being abolished, or anyway discontinued, or going back to the law when it's no longer convenient to have it. Anyway, Cameron was certainly mentioning that at some point earlier this year, and then I thought, well, this is very bad. But if there's going to be a vacuum in human rights, let's come in quickly with a children's rights bill. And so suddenly I had this idea of a children's rights campaign to get the children to be looked after as a first priority. So it's children's rights first. That's the name of the campaign. Children should come first in every society. In our society, they seem to come way, way down. In the election campaign earlier this year, there was very little mention of this whole topic of the abuse of children and the quite unacceptable numbers of families being disrupted and damaged by this horrible business of taking children away. And still left the elephant in the room type of dimensions of the thing. So all that's conspicuously, for me, absent from the election campaign, and I thought, well, this does not do. We have to change this. We have to get children absolutely to the top of the national priorities, in the next 5 years with this new Parliament. And so I launched this campaign in June. I had a bit of a nuisance in July, August. I've now got a huge problem with my daughter's illness, which has taken all my energies for the last 2 months. But I'm trying to get back to getting it going this year. So I'm going to have a little speech outside the Parliament on the 20th of November, which is the anniversary, 26th anniversary of the first signing of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. Because for a children's rights bill, you know, we don't need to invent the wheel. We can use the UN Convention as a template. And the thing about the UN Convention is that although 195 countries have ratified it, it's not law in any country as yet. Unless an agreement, a convention is law, it won't have any teeth, and all it is a piece of paper that people sort of vaguely aware of, but nothing is actually acted on in it, as we have seen. So we have a world in which child trafficking goes on, and child sacrifice, and all the horrors that children have to suffer go on everywhere, despite we having this convention. So let's lead the way in this country and bring it into our own law. That's the idea. Translate it into law, add in a few tailor-made clauses to deal with the problems that we particularly have experienced here. Things that Ian Joseph mentioned, you know, about the gagging of parents and the fact that children can't be heard, and in contact sessions they can't speak freely and the parents can't have them, and all these stupid things that's built into the system. Let's get rid of all of that and have it enshrined in a law. Children's rights first law. We've got a good sort of way in with the MPs, because last year 140 signed up to a national inquiry into historic child sexual abuse. Those MPs, I think we can probably approach again to say, while dealing with the past, the historic problems, can we please put in a prophylactic for the future against the kind of abuses that these poor people who suffered that have been beginning to report anyway. Let's put something in place for the future to stop it happening from now on. And it still doesn't deal with the present, and the present is the uninvestigated cases that we know about now. But at least if we've got something for the future, maybe that will start to bring focus on the present as well. So we must get movement going forwards, and we must deal with this problem, and that's my remedy. So if you feel that's a good start, and it may not happen, but at least we'll get a public debate going. Because if everybody starts asking their MP to support this children's rights bill idea, to have a children's charter, children's bill of rights, as part of our national law, then of course it will have to happen, won't it? Because it's just a question of numbers and pressure. So we've got to start somewhere, and I'm starting with this campaign just now. And if you feel that you are enthusiastic about it or would like to help, then all we have to do is each of us approach our MP. And if an MP gets about 50 demands from his constituents all along the same lines, then he usually would have to, or she would have to action it, do something about it. So we've got these 140 MPs that signed up last year to the National Inquiry into Historic Abuse. 105 of them have been re-elected. 105 MPs who are sympathetic to the problem of child abuse is quite a good start. So let's get going. Anyway, I don't know how we're getting on with the other speakers now. Hello, Marion. Are you going to say something? No. No? Okay. Sorry? Oh, don't see it. Sorry, I saw Debbie. Right, welcome back. Thank you. Because we're still dealing with the
Okay, is this working? Hello everybody, my name is Deborah Manager. As far as the law in Britain goes at the moment, there isn't any actual child protection directive in place. In Europe, we have the EU Child Protection Directive, which are called optional protocols. So it's up to countries themselves to adopt these directives, and Britain decided to opt out. And according to the directive, if you look at the EU Child Protection Directive, Britain's family courts are actually illegal and they are abusing children. So, you know, it's obvious why Britain's opting out of the EU Child Protection Directive. And so, you know, one of the things that I'm proposing is say to the people of Britain, stand up for your children's rights. Because no matter what you think of the EU, those directives fully understand the problem, all aspects of the problem of child abuse. And at every step they take, they protect the child. And basically, without those rights, our children's safety is left to the discretion of the authority. And unfortunately, we can't trust those authorities. They are corrupt and they are abusing children. There's no two ways about it. There are paedophile gangs and really terrible. The higher up you go, the worse the abuse is, and the more sadistic these people get. And they are intentionally sadistic. They're looking for fun, they're looking for pleasure, because they've got everything. They've got the power, they've got the money, and now they're bored. You know, and unfortunately, I mean, I really couldn't believe the scale of it actually, the SRA, satanic ritual abuse. You know, I mean, I suppose I knew that it was happening, but I just wasn't aware of the scale. But as I say, I've looked at it, and just looking at the historical cases, and that's one thing, because we know that this has been going on for a long time. So we know that the people in power, they've been letting more in like themselves. You know, because they open the doors to each other. They open the doors to each other. And there's one case, I mean, I can't go into much detail, but let's just say that this person is a child psychologist, and it was reported to child psychology, the head of the department that runs child psychology, that this person had abused children. And a year later they gave him an award for his outstanding contributions to child psychology. Okay, so that's what we're dealing with, you know, and even though most of the people involved in childcare, you know, on the ground level, they're all just doing their job, they're not going to ask questions because they want to keep the job, so they don't want to cause trouble for themselves. You only need a few people in senior positions, and then suddenly, you know, cases are closed, investigations stopped, and the biggest, well, this country at the moment, Britain, the only thing we're dealing with really is due to emotional risk. That is what Britain's Child Protection Directives are about for us now. It's just dealing with children who might suffer abuse or emotional abuse. But anybody who's reporting actual abuse of children, and especially sexual abuse or from a paedophile ring, if it's got a police officer in it, you're not going to get anywhere. And you know, I have to contact the police and report crime to the police crime unit, you know, who investigate the police, because a little girl in Nottingham was found hanged, and as soon as the police found the body, they said that she had committed suicide. And I questioned that. I said, well, how can you be sure that a 13-year-old child has hung themselves without an autopsy, without any investigation whatsoever, you know? And I'm not saying that she didn't, but what I'm saying is that, you know, there is nothing there. There is absolutely nothing there. The children suffering seriously abused, and it's something, I think, as a nation, when we think that Patrick Rock, for example, Patrick Rock was David Cameron's senior advisor, friend of 20 years. Up until last year, he was at number 10, head of David Cameron's policy-making cabinet. Okay, so he was there making policy for Britain. Don't say. He was even in charge of stuff to do with paedophilia online. Okay, and he was convicted last year of possessing hundreds of images, indecent images of children. So we are now, as a nation, suffering policies made by a man who, for his pleasure, likes to look at images of children suffering abuse. You know, and when it gets to that level, we do have to stop. We have to say, sorry. You know, because something seriously wrong. And as far as I'm concerned, if David Cameron's been a friend with somebody for 20 years, and if this guy was working for Thatcher as well, and we know that David Cameron was part of Carlton TV that covered up the Cook report, that was again about high-profile paedophiles. So how many more have been brought in since then? You know, we're dealing with the psychology here, we're dealing with the consciousness, we're dealing with the takeover. And I think the only way forward is for all of us to stand up for our children's rights and say no. Austerity is a future emotional risk to every child in Britain. And if you can go and take a baby off a mother who's suffering postnatal depression and then forcibly adopt it because she's a future emotional risk, well, I'm sorry, Mr. Cameron, and your family court, you can all go away because you're all a future emotional risk to every child in Britain. And I think that's the stance that we have to take. We have to be really hard loud about it. These are our children. They're our future. They're going to be looking after us when we're old. You know, how can life go on without the children? And we have to give them a better life. And there's one thing in this report, UK Crisis Report I've written, remove that term, that legal term, minor, away from children. Children are not lesser human beings. They are VIPs. They're not lesser human beings. And it's like an injection of madness going into our minds. We grow up thinking of ourselves as minor human beings. You know. And anything a child says, oh, just push it away, can't you? No, you can't. The children are not minor. Okay? All those professionals up in power now who are ignoring, who've opted out of children's rights, they're the minors. They're the minors. Minor intelligence. Them children, I tell you, we don't even know what's in there because the schools are just banging them. And in this report again, how many children are on Ritalin? People don't even know. You know, how the pharmaceutical industry making money out of the fact that our children can't cope with our child-unfriendly world and our child-unfriendly school and the rubbish, boring education that we're teaching them. You know, it's still Victorian period. We're still living in a Victorian school system for our children. Why can't our children learn about the solar system while they're learning how to read and write? You see what I mean? Because we're not expanding children's minds, and you know, it isn't just about forced adoption, it's about, you know, strengthening the family and letting people delight in their children. You know, I mean, this 5-6 day working week, who's got time to spend with their children? Where does that come into it? A child's right. So a foster parent, they can get £400 a week looking after one child. They don't have to go to work then, really, do they? They can just look after that one child, got £400 a week. And yet there's people with 3 or 4 children who are working for that amount of money. And they're not seeing the children. And when they are seeing them, they're stressed. You know, so the children are losing out every which way. And the children do have a right to loving parents. And, you know, as I say, I think we need to just be human and start loving each other and start saying, yes, why should this man have to work, you know, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, come home really tired? He can't even spend time with his children. You know, it's just, we've just been living so wrong, and like I say, we've been left with this idea that children are minor, we can just put them as secondary things, you know, we don't really have to focus on them that much. But I tell you now, they're not minor, are they, to the family court, who are earning £500,000 for every single court case. Every single child that goes through is £500,000. Okay, and that isn't including other professionals they have involved who get paid £3,000 a day. You know, really is, they have been having a field day, haven't they? You know, it's just free, easy money for them. And if you can just go and get a child because the mother is suffering postnatal depression, I mean, to me, that is just abominable. That the very effect of childbirth on women in this world leaves them feeling depressed. And so what is the solution? Oh, let's just take a baby away from her and give it to a stranger to be adopted forever. Oh, and we won't just take the baby as well. Actually, we'll take all your other children as well because, you know, you're too depressed to look after them. So we're living in a world where basically all we've got to do is make you depressed. And your children will be taken off you. So what kind of world is that? Sorry.
If you look at how the media reported the issue of child abuse, I'm a survivor, so I'm very good at reading and watching these things. I used to work in the media. The new sin now is trauma. My name's Tom, sorry. The new sin now in our society is trauma and expressions of trauma. Because if you look at the way reporting has been handled, in 2012 the Savile institutional abuse came out. And since then, the way children have been viewed within the media, it's now crossed over to now there's not enough mental health units for children. And it's the gift that keeps on giving as far as the government are concerned. Okay, we throw more kerosene onto the fire, we can all think of fire into it. That's the way it's viewed. Now, I think also we have to start thinking about parenting in a different way, or we have to start thinking about parenting and stop this childcare pollution that we have in our culture. Okay? I didn't have children. I became a parent. The fundamental shift on my being was so traumatic and moving in terms of my change of state that it was far more powerful for me than it was my children. And we have far too much of this, what I call, unfortunately, maternal narcissism. You don't have children. They're not hamburgers, okay? They are not people you have a hookup with. These are people who at some point in your life will probably bury you, be at your funeral. These are people you make a lifelong pact. Now for me, society breaks down in four fundamental ways. Adults and children, because that includes every single human being on the planet. At some time, at some stage, we've all been children or we're adults. Then the second one is male and female, girl and boy, man and woman. Okay? That's the next factor of inclusivity on the planet in the species. The third one then is individuals and institutions. And this is the fundamental one. When you go up against an institution, you're alone. And you're alone against a very, very big gang. And that gang wants money, it wants business. And what they are doing is they are creating, not consumers, they are creating units of consumption for the machine. Now, all I needed for me to recover was a conversation with my family about things we just were not prepared to talk about. And because I couldn't live with the pain of it. And I started asking questions about my family in 1985 when I was 18. Okay? Don't you think it's a bit funny about Grandad? It took me 28 years to get out of one family member who'd avoided me for decades. Yes, this was going on. And for me, the fire was out. But for everyone else, it was raging. Since then, I've been sectioned twice for having memories of the abuse. Okay? But I then go on to those environments, and what happens? I'm raped again. And it's business. The whole public sector now is business. And there's one thing we have to look at, and I'm going to ask the women to look at this. Okay? In 1971, feminism's main goal was to destroy the family. Now, when you look at these organisations like CAFCAS, like the NHS, they are predominantly staffed by women who are quite happy to work for the corporate boyfriend, daddy institution, and let someone else bring up their children. So it goes back to that fundamental issue of parenting. And I want to extend what you say, okay? We need to take the fourth sector and the way life breaks down is social class, ethnicity, race, and sexual orientation. Now, all those four things are first in terms of any social, political debate we have now in public, okay? And what I want to throw in there is a lot of us are all suffering from childism. That when we were children, we were lesser than. And we didn't grow up in democracy. We grew up in either imperial or monarchy units, where mummy and daddy are the king, or mummy's the empress, or daddy's the emperor. And it's changing. That debate, or rather that debate around parenting, the relationship between adults and children was changing. Unfortunately, it's now been completely stopped really since the popular left came in the late 90s with Tony Blair. And it's going backwards. And it's going backwards predominantly because what's happening now, the public sector is being staffed by people from other parts of the world who have a third world traditional tribal culture. And unfortunately, when you bring this up, you're called racist. Okay, take for example in Somalia. Right, Somalia it's quite normal for girls to be married off at 8, 9, 10. That's their culture. And now you have these people working in at the lower tiers of the public sector. Right at the bottom, they don't really advance very high, but they're kept in there to stop anyone getting through, because these people are damn terrified of losing their jobs, and they're quite happy to keep the machine going. And I think really, the first thing is we have to look at ourselves. Okay, John Bradshaw, who's the pioneer of the inner child movement, he said, if you don't get treatment for your child abuse issues as an adult, you will unconsciously create the conditions for your children to be abused. And this has happened in my case. I thought because I was aware of this issue, because I was talking about this issue, that I wasn't driving blind. But there was absolutely nothing I could do to prevent my daughter from being abused by her mother's family. Nothing at all. And who stands on her side? Because of feminism, the family courts, the police, the psychiatric institutions. So now, where we currently are, I'm going to try and bring this to a close, is that the whole sector, public sector, is now set up for people who've grown up in abusive environments to be traumatised from cradle to grave. And also, sorry, one thing I forgot to add. This is very important. This is very important. And it's just about money. It's just about money. Because in 2011, the then Business Secretary, Vince Cable, announced that the pharmaceutical industry will be used to offset the UK's dependency on financial services. So everyone in here who has a mortgage and gets happy when the house prices go up, that's a contribution to that culture. So we all do it to a degree. We are all complicit to some degree. It's a big club, and it's going to take several generations to resolve. Be enthusiastic. You're going to need it.
I just want to say again, all my research comes from something can happen, and I think, oh gosh, yeah, what's that all about now? Cambridge University will support children from foster care, will pay for them to go to university if they pass through the, the college. So I went on in my research a little bit more. Then I got a phone call, and life's faded. I mean, 70 odd years of age I am now, and I really believe in fate. So as I'm researching Cambridge University, I got a phone call from another lady who does a lot of research. At the end of the day, Cambridge University, they do so much. I'm not going to go into detail because you can all find out yourself. But they also support the paedophiles. And last year they held the conferences on paedophiles, and I had one of the bastard speakers there who'd been into prison. So universities are paying for the foster children to come into the universities And then what we're talking about are the children in the foster care who have got a very good brain, very intelligent kids, and it's all going to be taken away. So do be careful, any of your kids in foster care or adoption or whatever, universities are using them, alright? Oh, can I just say one more thing, please? That is that, talking of paedophiles, the paedophile information exchange went on the back burner, and this is how governments work. If there's something going on, and people in the nation are getting upset, oh, put it on the back burner, and then years down the line it comes out. When Blair came into power, he brought in the Sex Education Act. The Sex Education Act is grooming our children from the age of 4 or 5 sex. So I went on to do a little bit more research recently, and the amount of children, since this Sex Act came in the schools, the children who are being charged from the age of 5 years of age, is horrendous. It's going up and up and up because kids are doing sex. And I wrote to Cameron at the time in 2009, I said, Mr. Cameron, what do we do? Do we watch our children having sex as opposed to playing with toys and learning? He never answers, he never does. So there we have it. Paedophile information exchange is now in our schools teaching our children when they should be learning the 3 R's. Okay.
Does anybody else want to input on this section of the... Yeah, well, it's really, we're just, I suppose, going to be moving on to the end of the display up there.
That's what the transgender issue is about as well.
Yeah.
It's all of a sudden we've had an economic collapse. You know, transgender people have been around. They've been around for a long, long time, and then all of a sudden it's Hollywood. It's everywhere. The banks are now saying we're going to invest mainstream culturally in this issue because it's really important that you accept it. And you know, we have this bizarre situation where Caitlyn Jenner has been elected Woman of the Year. Yeah, this individual still has a very functioning penis attached to her body. And what it is tenderizing the public mind to accept different ideas around sex and sexuality to the point where, well, look, we've given these people their rights. And look, there was the left-wing website Salon put out an article last month saying, you know, I'm a paedophile, I'm not a monster. Okay? Transgenderism is being used as a stalking force to deal with the issue of adults having sex with children. Because that's another thing, it's a big club. It's my generation in their 40s, in our 20s, we were the highest rate of suicide in the country. We're in our 40s now, and we're still the highest rate of suicide in the country. That's because the culture is changing. It's opened up in our lifetime.
Well, going back into 1996-98, one of my campaigns was to blow up worldwide the truth of the side effects of hormone replacement therapy. Why were they messing around with women's hormones? HRT, very similar to the contraceptive pill. Third highest rate of cancer is to children born to women on contraceptive pill. Right? So all this research went on. Don't know if you've heard of Martin Walker. But Martin Walker wrote the book on HRT, License to Kill in Maine. But at the time, I just happened to phone up Lynn Featherstone, the MP's secretary, just because I wanted to speak to Lynn at the time. And we got talking about the Jonelle babies. Not many people have heard of the Jonelle babies. You haven't either, no. The Jonelle babies. The Jonelle babies are neither boys or girls. Nobody knows what they are. And this lady said to me, well, maybe I'm a Jonelle baby, but we don't talk about it. Now the Jonelle babies are, what you've just said is the transgender, that's right. Going back very briefly to HRT, women were growing penises whilst on that estrogen. I said it on ITV with that stupid doctor. I forget his name. But well, yeah, it's a clitoris extension. So what's happening is the races with all this estrogen is all changing, the hormones and everything. So So the Jonah baby is coming to what they've done. Again, they've changed it around to what you just said. So there you go. Sorry if I go on, everyone. Oh, I get so upset. Where's Belinda's one? Belinda, it's your look. They want me to go away and you've gone.
But I think we'll sort of move then into the really hard stuff. You're going to say right. Thank you very much.
Okay, good evening. My name is Dr. Rainer Kurz. I'm a chartered psychologist. You can guess from my accent where I come from, which is Germany. I left in 1989 and did a master's in the UK and have been working as a chartered psychologist ever since. During the daytime, I'm developing psychometric assessments or measures of cognitive ability, and at nighttime, I'm a pedophile hunter. Came about in a strange kind of way. 2.5 years ago, I stumbled across a case which I couldn't ignore. And since then, I've built up quite a collection of books, and I've got about half of them with me, and my props to kind of give you some illustration of what it's all about. And so if I take you through some of those 6 or 10 minutes, and then you can ask me questions and so on. Who knows about this book? The Devil on the Doorstep, My Escape from a Satanic Sex Cult. Everyone should know it. It came out only a few months ago. So that's the victim of Colin Batley. Colin and Elaine Batley in Wales. So he was a self-styled Satanist, running a little Satanist group with about 1,000 people in a cul-de-sac in Kid Valley, originally in London. The author of this book was abused from the age of 7, sexually abused from the age of 11 to 18, and the ideology that underpinned the abuse was Aleister Crowley. He was said to be one of the 100 most influential British people ever, and I would say that the influence was probably more on the negative side than the positive, because a lot of the satanic cults, more or less, based themselves on Aleister Crowley's writing, and there's, for example, Church of Satan, which in the 60s was started in Hollywood, and has got a gathering there of the famous, the more well-established organizations like OTO, Ordo Templi Orientis, which has a bit of a branch called Gnostic Catholic Church. So it's not Catholic, it's not really a church, it's a cult. And those kind of organizations are secret societies, and they appear to be behind a lot of evil in the world, because that's what Satanists are made to do the work of Satan. So one point I want to make on this one, I read that, and at the same time attended audience with Jimmy Savile, and other panelists here are a bit skeptical or critical of people doing a theater play, but I think it's very important that society starts a discourse on these matters, and it was well staged, and it really brought it home together with this book, the physical pain of rape. It rolls off the tongue too easily by now, rape, abuse, but we really need to empathize with the victims and really get in our head what's going on in such situations. Okay, historically, before I go into that, there's one other Welsh case. It's about Albert, Caroline, and Carol Hickman. So that's in the papers, you can look it up. There was fucking blood of a 11-year-old in 1970 in Bridgend. And the same couple were already in the late 80s put into prison for abuse. So Valentin Simonson, 1994, edited these books. Tim Tate got a chapter in there where exactly the same Satanists are already mentioned, and lots of other useful materials. In a post of psychiatry survivor book of the decade. The psychiatry generally is in complete denial, and that is by design. The next book that I would recommend is Sarah Scott. She did her PhD on the politics and experience of ritual abuse beyond disbelief. So moving beyond the discourse of disbelief that has been proffered by the authorities and the establishment. In it, I think about 30 people were surveyed, and about 13 of them had forced pregnancies. So in the sleep abuse survey, the entry is called forced impregnation, and so kind of by 200 women being made to bear babies that tend to disappear. And how they die is described in here. There are also other incidental deaths described, and how casually lives are basically ended. I'm a practicing Buddhist, so I live the beauty of life, and I work for Bufu, for working, so I've got a life I'm not cut out tackling those kind of criminals. First book I read on the topic was 2011 book from Robin Epstein and Schwartz. In there's an account of female abuse survivor. What stood out for me was a description of child-on-child sex in one of the stage. So imagine here, 2 8-year-olds having sex, and the cult sits there and cheers, yeah. And there's a male survivor count, and that describes all the torture, including being thrown out of an aeroplane and hurting his ankle. So all sorts of torture going on. The other bit that I found interesting there is description of ceremonies in the gardens of major mansions. 100 people watching someone being raped and burnt. And I got a feeling from what I'm reading on the internet, one particular castle, which I tried to do a bit of research on, it's got its own railway station, and it's got lots of cars, old cars. And that kind of value is mentioned apparently quite frequently for human sacrifice murder in the UK. Okay. And Healing the Unimaginable, that is a textbook by Alice Miller in Canada. So she had 4 cases suddenly coming all at the same time. She wasn't prepared at all to her psychology training, because psychologists are trained to believe that the problem is in the mind of the person. It's not at all discussed how the environment interacts, and that child torture can bring about dissociative identity disorder. The idea is to be a bit of a secret topic. It has again been suppressed by mainstream academia. Okay, so that's about it as an overview, and I'm quite happy to answer your questions on the elephant in the room. I'm going to wrestle with it. It'll be the elephant man.
Can I say something again? Last year, a law was passed that the blood of children could now be drunk and bought legally. And this goes back to how the bloody laws go on the back burner, and then out they come. It's all to do with satanic blood. It's on the webpage. I drink your blood. But it's for the wealthy people, and it's advertised for the people, the elite, to help them with their health. So you can buy the blood and get help. It's on the website, Children Screaming to Be Heard. All the research, all the evidence is there. Came out last, did you know?
No, it doesn't surprise me. Only 200 years ago we would have executed people in this country in public. It's entertainment. So whenever I see someone slapping a child in public, I just think, well, behind closed doors, I know that that's 10 times worse if you're willing to do that in public. So we're still recovering. We're still recovering. A lot of it's the church. A lot of it's, you know, if you have the power of God, you can take away people's lives.
We can hear him.
Well, I know that the
Sorry, yes, right back. We have asked anybody who wants to speak, please come and stand here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, a lot of it comes from the church. All of our major institutions come from, you know, it's only 2,000 years old. I mean, the species has been around a lot longer than that. So if you boil down what was the Inquisition, well, you can see that in the modern state today. We haven't recovered from that. Like, you expect David Cameron to do something about it? He went to Eton, for Christ's sake. They abuse children as part of their culture amongst the children. So imagine what the relationships between adults and children are. These people are unrecovered addicts, they're unrecovered abuse victims. And so for them it's like, well, I'm just going to get, you know, I'm going to go along to get along. I'm going to get as good as I can. This is why I said it's going to take generations of this. It won't happen in our lifetime. And there's a war going on to make more money out of it. So they want to keep the machine going.
Our research goes back to, let's take that, Tom. Our research goes back to the Nazis, actually, which brings us to
The Nazis just got caught, that's all.
no, it brings us to the Lebensborn, Tom, the Lebensborn program, which is the adoptions and everything like that.
No, the Nazis just got caught. They were just a smaller gang with less influence and less established power. And they went up with a bigger Roman cult that had more influence and more established power. So all these
See if you can have a look at the Lebensborn program,
Oh,
which was written for children screaming to be heard.
I know the grandchild of a Lebensborn. No, I know the daughter of a Lebensborn woman.
Right.
Okay, and her life, most of her early life was cocaine addiction and sexing out. Now she's straightened up, but no kids.
Sounds like our politicians all puffing away.
Oh yeah.
Whose turn is it? Oh, sorry, Raymond.
I don't know, I get some stories, but I'd rather have some questions, things that are on your mind. Okay, good. Bookbite likes Driscoll. He's the copper named the murderers of Stephen Lawrence in the third attempt. He took over and in this strong relationship with now Baroness Doreen Lawrence. So, very interesting his biography. He was looking into the Lambeth pedophilia issues and named politicians. And shortly after, very shortly afterwards, he was moved off the case. And so that's a very interesting chapter. It's called Belgium. And why is it called Belgium? You know? Mark II, yes, so that's the first European case that has somehow half or one tenth. Mark II was keeping children in cellars and then passed them on, and then the person murdered 5 young women. And it was presented as being just a single kind of murder case, when actually he, for example, he had killed already some girls and then let out of prison by the Prime Minister. Amnesty. And the Prime Minister, by the time the 7-year case was actually finished with sentencing of Mark II and his wife, that guy was in European Court of Justice, Judge Lovely. 20 or so witnesses died in the course of the investigation, and so was the guy there after truth that he's actually working on behalf of the European-wide pedophiling. And the other bit that I find very interesting in there is the stay out in camp. So I heard recently someone saying that from the beach apparently right because they don't have no bank account. I wonder what these people say about children who don't have bank accounts. So what you can read there in the book is a kind of torture type that has been reported also from Belgium and Canada. So I don't want to spoil it, but read it for yourself and then think about it.
Yeah, my question is that I understand that from listening to various cases in the States that the thing to do with whistleblowers and witnesses is to section them under the Mental Health Act or to send them for psychotherapy to wipe out their memories, and they don't come out until they're unable to travel to those memories. My question is it necessary for people to have their memories returned so that they can travel to those times of abuse in order for them to recover as a society, as a person, as a society, as a community? Is it necessary that we need to reverse all the memory damage that's been done by psychotherapy or psychologists, psychiatry, you know, with the drugs? You've got psychiatry with the pharmaceuticals, you've got psychotherapy that basically doesn't allow them to travel into their memories. So that's my question.
I think that actually had to recover from 17 years childhood at the age of 30 when I suddenly started getting flashbacks. And although I wouldn't describe it as actually, you know, SRA, but it was close. There was something that I felt evil about it, and I did have to remember in order to reconnect with myself, and I found that I was actually emotionally crippled. I had somehow imagined quite correctly all the way people feel, you see, and because I'd have to do it from the age of 2. So to me, my feelings were real, but they didn't, but they weren't real, and I realised, you know, I had to reconnect, had to relive it, remember it, and then I connected to my feelings, and then I was allowed to be me.
Yeah.
Because before that, I wasn't allowed to be me. Me had to be kept hidden away. I was literally locked away inside myself. And the only reason why I think I got the memories back is because I had to go to hypnotherapy in order to start polytechnic, just to be able to say my name without stammering. Okay? That is how bad it was. And I literally lived in a prison. I didn't do anything I wanted to do. I literally just tried to be what people said I should be. You know, so I think there's a lot of people out there who might be abusers, but really they've never been in touch with themselves because they're just lost. You know, I mean, I literally could have died inside myself. You know, which is a scary thing to think, but that is what I feel. You know.
You get to a point with it where it's like, death has got to be better than this.
Yes. Yeah.
I used ayahuasca and peyote.
I used cannabis.
No, that didn't work for me. All that did was shut me down. All that love and meditation and stuff. I did a peyote ceremony in Spain, and I just thought, nothing I've ever done in life has worked, you know, and I just feel I've given the best of myself. It just I just get demonized, I just get hated, I just get hurt. So I said to these prayers, I said, please, will you send me a river of tears to knock down this wall of grief that separates me from other human beings? And I thought, that's it. You know, unfortunately, I treated those things like I did like a weekend break. You know, you don't solve these issues taking ecstasy at a party. I didn't realise it would take me 10 years of like, okay, want a river of tears? Right, let's turn on the taps. And I just went, doom, doom, doom. But one thing about it that kept me going was the child that I was. I kept reminding myself of that 15-year-old boy who was just going through hell and staying alive. And it was keying into that strength of my original being that actually helped me recover myself as an adult.
Yes, I think just getting back in touch with yourself and your own feelings. And I think I found there was a sort of purity there, because, you know, it's like I know what it's like to be a child, and in a way I still am a child, you know. I mean, I'm 53 years old, but I'm actually 23, you know. That is what I say to myself, or 25, because from that point when I started to remember, that was when I became me. I suddenly had the power to say, I don't want to eat meat, you know. I always wanted to be vegetarian. I never dared do it, you know, because I never dared, because I was so terrified. But it was a terror that I just wasn't aware of. I just didn't understand why I couldn't be like other people and just think, I want to do this, or I want to do that. And these things, although this is personal, you know, we have to remember that this is the impact that's being had on the next generation. So we're getting children who are growing up, not being themselves. They're being programmed to be something else.
Well, you get half a person times half
Exactly,
a person.
exactly.
Makes a quarter of a person, then takes another quarter.
Yes.
It's ever diminishing return.
We are losing out as a species, you know. And if Britain's banking system can be taken on by all the world, then I think, you know, Britain, we should be too early in actually restoring the child to its full human being, you know. And also, I think we do need to get back to our roots. In Celtic Britain, Celtic Christian Britain, a child had the same social respect as was given to a king. It was only the Romans with their gender construct, and it was the Romans particularly, in all of Europe, who abused children. It was against the law for a Roman man to mourn the death of a child up to the age of 3. But once the child was 3 years old, you could mourn for 3 days. And if the child was 4 years old, you could only mourn for 4 days. Now, Rome did conquer the whole of the Celtic kingdom, which was Germany, which was parts of Germany, France, Ireland, Britain. They were all Celtic. You know, and this was before Christianity. And then when Christianity came along, Britain and Ireland and other countries managed to defeat Rome. Why? Not because we all became Christians, because Jesus, as people understood then, I'm not talking about Jesus as in the Christian religion that we live in now, I'm talking about Jesus that they understood, was saying, you were right, your Celtic way of life was right. You see? And that's where people gained the power from, and that's why we were a Celtic Christian society. And women were abbesses. Every abbey had an abbess, and it was her duty to make sure the sick were cared for, people in need, that socially things were shared. But as soon as the Romans came back again, then you see, with the Roman Christianity.
Well, it's interesting you brought up the attitude about grief and
Yeah.
the Romans. The exact same thing has happened in psychiatry now. We're at the Diagnostic Statistical Manual 5 currently, which came out in May 2013. If you go back to diagnose DSM-3, grief, you were allowed 2 years. If you hadn't fully grieved the death of a loved one, it was considered to be a mental disorder. Diagnostic Statistical Manual 4, that was reduced to 2 months. The latest one has reduced it to 2 weeks. If you haven't got over the death of a loved one within 2 weeks, you have a mental illness.
Yeah, but I think I'll leave.
Okay, I think the
It's just what Tom said about the. Yeah, I'm Margarita. About DSM actually, and relating to the child issue. Actually, if you remember, Tom, now DSM-5 says that they diagnose babies actually, and the justification if the baby cries means baby has got mental issues. And this is actually, I think it's gone beyond belief. And there are thousands, I don't remember the actual figure, thousands of children underage and our babies in thousands are diagnosed and being dropped out. I think this is just a very huge problem we are facing. It's all together. It's everything in here, and I think that it's going beyond belief and going too far. I think solving kind of all these issues are linked up, and at the end of the day, children are being sacrificed on all levels. It's a very serious issue. So I think we need to be aware of this and be on guard.
We have a lot of noise about physical acts. We have a lot of noise about physical acts of child sexual abuse, physical rape.
Sit up here.
Sorry, I told him I should give me a diary. We have a lot of noise about the physical trauma of being sexually abused as a child. Like I have a thing called the don't laugh anal fistula in ano, which took me until my 28th year for it to develop. It was a tear in the wall of my rectum, which basically only flared up in my late 20s when I decided to follow a spiritual path. And I went and saw the doctor, and he said, "Oh yes, it's very common. You know, about 90% of the people out in the greater group, they all have what you have." But the key thing about child sexual abuse is the emotional damage. You are permanently emotionally damaged for the rest of your life. My door was open to psychopaths most of my life. It was like, you know, I put a sign on the communal door of my council block. Yeah, the keys are in the lock. My wallet's on the table. Help yourself. And I was like, why are people doing this to me all the time? And because my whole family were doing it to me. Because essentially that's another thing. When you speak out as a child, because that's what I learned about my experience, I was told I was the only one who didn't go along with it. I fought back. All the others went along with it. In adulthood, because I fought back in childhood, I then became the catharsis object for my peers. I was the family Jesus, to be ritually sacrificed and crucified every couple of years. So it's the emotional damage. And I want to recommend a book, actually. This was the first start, the beginning of my recovery. Just actually knowing that I was being emotionally abused by the people who I loved and trusted. And it's called Stalking the Soul. And it's by Marie-Jean Hijoyen. Okay, it's French, and it's called Emotional Abuse. It's just about emotional abuse. It only came out in 2005, and it's brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant, and it tells you in enormous detail how emotional abusers go around and operate. I read it and I thought, oh my God, this is the mother of my daughter. I've been living with this person for 3.5 years. I mean, it terrified me. It absolutely terrified me. So it's really the emotional thing. We're set up as children like wind-up toys. You go out into the world now and find a composite of you, and it'll all just happen over and over again. You go to hospital, you experience that. You go to the police, you'll experience that. It's like, you know, in horror movies, when the bad guy's after the teenage girl in the forest, and she sees a house and the door's open, and says, "Don't worry, come in, I'll protect you," and closes the door, and something happens. And it's like, oh my God, I'm in the house of the murderer now, locked in. It's constant repetition trauma. I don't know where I've gone now.
Sorry, Tom, what's the name of that book again?
Stalking the Soul. Stalking the Soul. It's brilliant. I'm trying to remember. Marie-Jean Hijoyen. Higoyen. That really started me. That helped me to start realizing I was in a rabbit hole. There's also enormous amounts on YouTube. If you look at the work of Sam Vaknin, he is a self-confessed psychopath, and he's actually spent a lot of time in prison and looked at his own life, and he looks very much at narcissism and how narcissism affects victims. There's also a guy called Spartan Life Coach. He's brilliant. He looks at narcissism is
it was taken out of the last diagnostic. Narcissistic personality was taken out of the last diagnostic system manual. I say this having talked far too much.
Well, by the helpline, I'm getting more and more calls coming in about kids reaching the age of, I've got a loud voice anyway. Kids reaching the age of 16, and their parents are being told that they have to now, because they've got learning difficulties or mental problems, and they will now have to stay in care, in adult care for the rest of their lives. There's a hell of a lot of 16-year-olds this is happening to, coming from the foster care into the mental health. Did you know?
It doesn't surprise me. I've been saying for many years, pretty soon we'll have the John Lennon Imagine Rehabilitation Camp.
Yeah.
Or the Bob Marley One Love Rehabilitation Camp. These martyrs from the hippie movement that now, if you listen to Imagine, the actual words, these are the words for psychopath. Imagine there's nothing. Just imagine there's nothing, because I'm going to take your life. He's not talking to himself, he's talking to someone else. No possessions, no hell, no blah blah blah, nothing.
Okay, let me just talk.
Neil wants to have a question.
I was going to talk about therapy. So, trauma therapy really seems to be appropriate when memories do return or when people have major adjustment problems. So, on the Psychotherapy Council website, you've got indicates of specialization, that there are about 80 people who specialize in people with ritual abuse, and I've got a lot of respect for those people who do that. There are very few psychologists and even fewer psychiatrists who are able, willing to handle the truth. There are all sorts of mechanisms to deny the reality, so no one should assume that they will be taken seriously. It's only a small minority of health professionals who recognize the issues. And medication doesn't work and prevents people from recovering. And re-exposure therapy, which is meant to be scientifically proven to work, I was very much warned against that. I had, for forensic reasons, I had to get someone to recall stuff in front of the camera, and after doing that twice for different specialists, we had to try to do a third one for various reasons, which he refused, because it is very, very re-traumatizing, and so I think it's very faulty, the research phase. But let me ask the question, why is it that the mental health professionals are behaving in that way? And we need to go back to 1994. So there's one chapter here about Joanne Coleman, psychiatrist, and what happened in the 70s, domestic abuse came out, in the 80s, child abuse came out, and then extreme abuse started to come out, and then the establishment put the lid on it. And I would call it the battle of the Joannes. So there was Joanne Coleman, she's with 80 people with survivors of ritual abuse. On the other side was Joanne Lafontaine, Professor Joanne Lafontaine, an anthropologist, and a bit of a mystery why she was asked by Health Minister Virginia Bottomley to look into ritual abuse and then find that it doesn't exist. There were 40 senior health professionals who protested against the report and its acceptance by the Department of Health. And that's the reason why police guidelines basically assume that ritual abuse doesn't exist. In the NHS, it's a career limiting or career terminating move to attest to ritual abuse, and even those professionals who are experienced and believe the victims and believe that it's truthful. They are too frightened to write reports. So I had to write the reports myself in the end.
I think the thing though is addiction. If you are a paedophile, you're addicted. You can't stop yourself. You know these people know that they're harming children. They know that. They're not thoughtless, uncaring people, but they're addicts. And what makes it more attractive is the whole, oh, pedophiles, we've got to hang them, we've got to flog them. Because then that makes it more naughty. That makes it more risky. My grandfather was the main businessman of my family. And he was born in 1917, and he grew up in one room with four other people, his brother, his sister, and his mother and his father. And his father used to fight for money. He was a pugilist and a drunk. And my grandfather grew up in like chronic poverty. And I don't bear any ill will towards him. I know that he was a product of his environment. But the whole ritual aspect, everyone who's an addict has a ritual. If it's heroin, if it's crack, if it's marijuana, if it's paedophilia, there is a ritualistic aspect. Okay? I don't know if anyone in this room has been a regular pot user. I used to be, to deal with the issue. You know that there's a whole emotional ride from buying the hash to going to the buying the weed, to going home, skinning up, to having that first toke. Okay? And it's exactly the same with paedophilia. It's an addiction. However, fortunately, then we go into how can we medicalise this issue? How can we treat these people? I think from the perspective of a victim, we have to take the emotion out of them to recover our own feelings about it. We have to do that, okay? We have to take it out of the realms of Hammer horror of Dracula. That actually, these people are just people. They're just people. They're not Freddy Krueger. It's not EastEnders. And once we humanise them, we can reclaim our own humanity. Because if you dehumanise another, you lose your own humanity. And unfortunately, the media is still representing them as this kind of like scary monster horror film type thing, when it's actually a human addiction problem. And I'm not sure about the ritual abuse thing. There's lots of. I lived in Nottingham when the case was coming out, so I heard a lot about that, and that didn't go anywhere. But also, there is ritual at the top end of society, within the establishment.
Can I just also feedback on one of the books you mentioned? There was an 11-year-old involved with some blood sucking of a child in Bridgend. I want to recommend a book called Buried Alive by James Casbolt. And on page 43, he talks about the suicides by hanging in teenagers in Bridgend.
Absolutely.
And he actually gives an explanation for that, in that there was an underground base in Bridgend, and obviously we know from the underground bases there were 1,400 of them, and Phil Schneider talks about the 32 floors of these bases. They're on 12 cubic meters, and they're underneath all airports and capitals. And he only had like 37 clearance. He only could go down to 7 floors, but he said you would not imagine what was going on in the floors below that. So, and James Casbolt, he was a baby amongst 42 babies in a bunker in Canada, newborn babies who were raised by animals, so they had extra perception. And he described how he got rescued by, there was some kind of fight going on for these kids because of the powers they had, telepathic powers. He can remotely kill people depending on whether they're weak in the heart or brain. And so he basically described this chimera has escaped from an underground base in Bridgend, and there's an injunction by the mainstream media now for reporting any more suicides. It's got to over 70 suicides, and he stopped reporting them probably at about 40. But it's still going on. I mean, I'd love to hear about that.
Yes, also certainly I noticed the info suicide, as they called it. There was some info website, and it was made out that they kind of inspired each other. But the real point there is that suicide, as any ordinary person, people can imagine, it can easily be staged murder, staged assassination, and that's how these orcans, as I call them, operate. So we are talking about organized, ritualized crime, abuse networks, mafia-like structures, and anyone who speaks out, abuse survivors, is at risk of being killed. And Dr. Michaela Huber in Germany, she is the most experienced advocate. She runs a list that goes to 1,000 people. She says she gets 150 requests each year from individuals who want to get out of death cults. And that's obviously quite tricky, because those people are going to try to silence you and kill you, or put you in psychiatry and sanction you. If you say too much and you disclose any things you've done yourself after the age of 10, then you might end up in prison. And so, and it's a taboo in society, so it can't really be tackled. And there are quite a few strange deaths that have been reported in media, and you can speculate that it might well be a bit of help from MI5 or MI6 or Special Branch or other authority representatives silencing those people who are leaking.
Well, question for you, and also a bit in response to what you said, Tom. Yes. Because, you were talking about the abusers that paedophiles, that, paedophilia is like a sort of addiction. And you see, because I've been looking, and this is like a question for you as well, because you're dealing like with the worst aspects of the FRA cases as well. Because after looking at the research that I've done, I'm starting to realise that there's a difference between some of the abusers who are, especially the ones that are quite wealthy, that I don't mean they're just people with a lot of money, but people that are born into a sort of money background. And you look at the things like fox hunting and the blooding of the children, and they know the abuse that goes on at the boarding schools, and I think they send the children specifically because they want a particular type of mentality, a particular type of psychology, and it goes beyond paedophilia. I think paedophilia, as experienced by a lot of children in their own families, is a reflection of their consciousness, because that's what we're living, that's what's ruling us. But I think that with these people, they enjoy the sadism of it, and that is what it's about. It's about enjoying the suffering of the most innocent, you see. And so the more innocent the being is that they're going to make suffer, the more pleasure they get, and they believe that there's some kind of energy, power that they get from, and that's how they get power.
It's an expression of power.
Yeah.
Essentially. But
yeah.
The richer, if you think about how power is dressed, power is always ritualistic.
Yeah.
To lend itself. Think about the priest. Well, I've got an old Catholic manual from my aunt from the 1920s, and all the different parts of the year and the different robes he has to wear, and that's an expression of power. But domination over others is weakness, expressed as power. That's all. It's just, and for me, the ritual aspect was more about addiction, and also I'm going to throw in narrative therapy as well. If you've come across narrative therapy, I think that's really important as well for people to recover. Write your own story, warts and all, regardless, and don't write for anyone else but yourself. To reclaim that person that you lost, that wasn't protected. But yeah, it's about power. But it does make me wonder. I've walked. I've knocked around.
That's interesting. What you like, hey, she's like
it's really sadism, and what's the common, where everyone agrees, is that the basis for the ideology, religious base, the political, military base, and as commercial, the bedrock is intergenerational abuse, incest, from as early as possible, and guess what that is? From birth, or people traumatizing in the womb, and I've listened to people who have had memories of pre-birth events. And so you start them early. It's a bit like a human resource process. So I'm an HR professional. It's about selection of people and development. And so the most talented babies who develop empathic and so on abilities, they are nurtured towards being the next IT generation. And those who survive their 5 years of torture, they graduate to become abusers, and they are meant to continue the tradition that has been going on for hundreds of thousands of years. So, yes, it's sadism, and it's deliberate, it's traumatizing, it's harming the person, making them in a way, essentially it's about the others, a little bit of humanity, so the secret services are very skilled in doing that. So in the Mengele in Nazi Germany, we did experiments, but then some of the Satanists went through the monarch instructions. So that's all we've done it for decades. And the monarch programming is not named after butterflies. Think about it recommends daily abuse, daily keeping the terror, and I was thinking about developing a scientific measure. So I would call it as the log cube, the Illuminati occult perversion squad. And that would have questions like, I like to give my child bad drink, which might be blood or urine, giving children bad food, which might include faces. I might like to let water drop on my child's forehead for hours just to see what happens. I might, would you like to hold a house alarm against your daughter's ear until the vision goes funny? That are the kind of things that people do. And that's sadism, and it's meant to get people to live in fear and to stay quiet.
I just want to add something about this whole thing. When you recover, you do have enormous available skills to you. One of them is hypervigilance. You become much more aware of human beings and the power of human beings. They can't destroy your humanity as long as you stay alive.
Hi. Just one aspect that hasn't come up, and it's very important. I don't know how many people are aware of it, but it takes the child abuse and torture to a completely new level, and that's on the state basis of creating mind control toys, which has been done in the United States a great deal, and it probably happens here as well, although our forces probably send people over the States to be tortured and mind controlled. Dr. Mengele in the camps, he had actually been tasked by Hitler to create mind-controlled slaves of the children, with the children. And shortly after the end of the war, Dr. Mengele was spirited over to the United States on the Project Paperclip, which most people think was just, rocket scientists, but it wasn't. It was some of the worst war criminals that you could imagine. And he was instrumental in the MK-Ultra, the CIA MK-Ultra program. And there it's on a completely different level because it's done by the state. Children were sexually abused and tortured on United States bases in an underground facility at Disney World. It's important to get that aspect, to be aware of that aspect. Which brings me to the other point. I've got 5 copies of Cathy O'Brien's Access Denied for Reasons of National Security, 15 quid each. If anyone wants any, come see me later on.
Okay, so I just want to tell people about a website that I've done some research for, Kevin Annett, and it's www.mfn99.web.com. That's
Did you put a sentence?
yeah, MFN, as in multi-faith network, mfn99.webs.com. And he asked me to do some research, and I got down to the Metropolitan Archives, and I took pictures of all the stuff that was there under the New England Company, and the documents go back to the setting up of the New England Company in 1649. And this was to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. These churches were built, and basically that was the sort of start of the satanic cults using the name of Jesus to spread their residential schools all over the world. So it's an international satanic cult that goes back to 1649, and the New England Company today has a website called newenglandcompany.org. Now, they call themselves a philanthropy organisation. They give money to charities. They are running the Charities Commission, and through those charities, you have international trafficking of babies through the orphanages. They call them orphanages. There are thousands of such orphanages where these girls who are held hostage in hotels or buildings, official buildings, and they're producing babies every 9 months, and they're told that their children are going to the West for education, and these children are brought here, and we know what goes on here with babies through the case that is in the elephant that we're not talking about today. So I just want to say there is a lot of research on that website, and it's also related to my personal experience of how whistleblowers are treated in this country. I'm not going to say any more than that, but obviously the only way we can change this, I'll end on a happy note, is there is the public liability insurance for all businesses. We have to find out what we are doing with few of our network friends here. We're getting the public liability insurance bond details of local authorities, social services, and as we know, the United Kingdom Corporation was bankrupted in 1930 by the Geneva Convention with the League of Nations. So, yeah, I've got that wrong around, but basically all public services must be with the consent and contract and authority of the people. If we don't consent, it's dishonourable. So you issue a notice of dishonour in a commercial lien to cease trading and seize assets under UCC 3503, 3504, 3505 without prejudice 1308, and you basically give them a notice of dishonour in a commercial lien. You give them so many days warn them 3 times a month each at most. And then if they carry on with dishonour, they've stolen your property, they've kidnapped your children, you just basically then get their public liability insurance fund details, and you get their insurer, and you send them that commercially they have to stop trading, and that is the end of that company. One person can do it, and we're already starting to send these notices out. I had to send my council a commercial lien because the terrorism has gone on for 15 years since my 5-month-old niece was sexually abused and killed in a hospital with satanic ritual abuse. Exactly as we have in that elephant I witnessed 15 years ago. And I've gone through all the process of the courts and the social services and the councils and the persecutions and the false prosecutions, blah, blah, blah. And I'm still going through that at the moment. I understand what you've been through. Everybody here, we shouldn't be afraid of telling the truth. We shouldn't be afraid of wanting change. We don't accept Satanism in public service. We don't accept practicing Satanism in our public services. It's as simple as that.
I'm afraid to say that Satanism has now been made legal, United on a Royal Navy warship.
Well, you've got the money.
And it's going to carry on to the other armed forces being legalised.
Right, so to that I would say that no legislative laws are legal because this country is bankrupt. A bankrupt country cannot legislate. We have to be under the gold standard. This country is running on counterfeit money. China is offering $3 to $6 million of gold to each one of us to bring us into the gold standard. How did counterfeit money currency didn't give us at least that much? Right, because it's ill intent, control, rituals, and slavery. That's the agenda of this New England company's whole structure. It's a global structure. They enslave the whole world, and that's what the gold standard will remove immediately. And I think Professor Kesh has dealt with the technologies. They have to come in, they have to sign for the technologies. There's all deadlines everywhere. This country hasn't filled out the form for our gold standard.
30-odd years ago, I was with a lady whose brother was a CID officer in Scotland Yard, and she told me that all about Jimmy Savile. And one other person who's now living in Philadelphia, but he's been called in for questioning already, but and one of the other ladies with us that night said, well, why doesn't Scotland Yard do something about Jimmy Savile if he's a big-time internet-ophelia? And why doesn't he do something about the other one who loves the choir boys? And this lady, Margaret, said, well, my brother said, until they're both dead, nothing can be done because they raise millions and millions for the big charities. So that was that. So Savile recently came out. But very briefly, going back to the paedophiles and what Tom was saying earlier, and what this lady was saying, we can all go and research, we can all sit and talk, we can do whatever we try to do, but this has been going on for centuries, since the Romans. So what are we going to do? Continue to research, continue to walk and talk and whatever? We're not going anywhere. And when you think about, I did a video last year, I held a life-size dolly, Igor did me, and I got into trouble with the Christian people because they said, Maggie, it's terrible. I'm holding a life-size dolly that looks like 6 months old, baby. And I'm saying, look, the paedophiles will take a little baby like this and fuck it. Excuse my language, ladies. Excuse me. But it's true. And I had to take it down because it was too shocking. But when you think about paedophiles, what do they get? 2 or 3 years in prison? Come out and do the same again? That's if they are caught. So what are we going to do? Carry on talking. What can we do? We need to come out and march en masse. Or get Guy Fawkes to come back. Wish I could be Guy Fawkes.
I was just going to pick up on something that Tom said when he said, it can't happen in our lifetime. I really disagree. I think that, you know, if this government can come along and tell sick people and disabled people that you're not allowed any disability and you're not going to have any money at all, if they can do that overnight, we can change this bloody country overnight. We seriously can, and like I say, we do. Once we get a heart, I think it's getting our heart and getting our strength, because, as I say, what happened to me was extreme. But I think everybody in the society is suffering from that same disconnection from ourselves to some degree. You know, just through going through the school system, and it took an extreme thing to wake me up, and I'm fully awake now, fully aware. And as I say, I know that we can get rid of it. We can defeat this consciousness. Because it is a consciousness, it's been feeding for 1,000 years.
Debbie, wherever you go in the world, the British people have always been known as lambs to the slaughter.
Exactly. But I'll tell you something, I think the British people, that's our strength, right? That is our strength.
There's no strength in the British people, even the United Nations are messing with kids.
I think that the British people, because child abuse, like you say, is everywhere. And the fact that this country has dealings with Saudi Arabia, you can marry a 1-hour-old baby, right? That's a fact. Okay? So the very fact that this country and the people who are in power in Saudi Arabia, who are controlling Saudi Arabia, against the Arab people's wishes, because there, if you speak out against your government, you get your head chopped off. Okay, so you've got a captive population there. And who put them in power? Britain. Britain put the Saudi royal family in power. Okay, and they were the most evil tribe that they could find. Everybody hated them throughout the Middle East. And Britain empowered them. And Britain put them in power. And
yeah, but Britain was also in India. And what did they do? They halved Pakistan and India. What did they do? They gave after the war, they gave the Jews.
But you see, that's not the British people. That is not the British people. We have to lose this idea of we of Britain, because the people of Britain have not been controlling Britain for a very, very long time.
Because they won't. They won't, Debbie. Listen, on the HRT campaign, right, I did the first world conference on the side effects of that drug that was murdering women. Legally murdering women. Doctors came from all over the world at their own expense to be guest speakers. My database was in excess of 11,000 women who contacted me. Right, and earlier I said about these women or bodies were changing and what was happening to them. 700 women only turned up from out over 11,000 women who contacted me. That says it all. When you campaign for 40 odd years, and you do something that's big time, where's the British people? Oh, sorry, they're sleeping. Now, oh, they're on Facebook.
Well,
that's it.
I do think that we have to have hope, you know, and I really think that British people have been battered down.
Well, as we talk now, a little baby's been fucked, and we've got to have hope. We've got to get out there and do something.
Well, that is exactly what I'm saying. I think the British people will get up and do something. You know, people are going to wake up. We're going to have to go and do what Iceland did. You're going to have to stand up.
Sorry to interrupt. I just want to break this because of the time. I would just like to say that we do want to distinguish between the corporate interest and the goodwill of the people, the humanity. That's where the conflict lies. Now, the East India Company was doing all the satanic destruction of the royalties of India, 600 royals, and the borders all over the world, and trafficking people and killing the men and raping the women and stealing the children. That's been going on for decades. So we've got to identify the satanic part of the corporate structures of policies that don't have a human, and then the one, you know, the children, the family unit that we're trying to provide the family unit here. So, can I hope you don't mind.
Sabine actually would like to come in. Oh, really? We're getting near to the wind-up time, but we...
Can I just continue? I think the thing about recovering from this Turn your mic on, Sabine. Turn your camera on, please. You're on the screen in the theatre. Please turn on.
Yes, I keep clicking, David. It doesn't respond to silly button.
I think we're getting feedback from the theatre sound. Now we are beginning.
I think we're on now.
Yes, now we can see you. Thank you, Sabine.
Great. Well, thank you, David, Belinda, and everybody. And I just thought, before everybody goes home, maybe you can just turn to your neighbor and tell each other what we're taking away from today. I find it incredibly moving, I find it incredibly encouraging, and I find it amazing that today took place. And I would very much like you to just express for yourself. So turn to your neighbor and tell what you are taking home, please. Just for the next 5 minutes. David, Ross, and Belinda are going to close the meeting.
Thank you, Sabine.
Thank you. Okay, well, she has directed what we should do for 5 minutes, so... Oh, Paul, just wants to quick.
Regarding what Belinda was saying about the satanic rituals going, sort of legitimate. On American basis, armed forces basis, the Church of Satan has the same rights as Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, or anything else. It's an official church, and there was a guy in the British Royal Navy. He actually got permission, and he was given facilities to do his satanic rites on a ship. And after that, he got his level was raised, or he got promoted. He got promoted. Not only that, but he was also offered a job in the Department of Defence. They like Satan's, it's becoming more. It's been there all the time. What this lady was saying about Britain and the children, it's not just Britain. It's not just British people. It's across the borders, across the world. It's across in all nations. And you've got the same lack-a-day. People just don't stir themselves to this because it's not covered in the press, not nearly as much as it should be. You get stuff like Savile and so on and so forth. Anyway, thanks for...
Can I counter this Satan business? Okay, I think it's a bit niche, and I'm not a Christian. Okay, and I was raised a Catholic, and I was naughty boy, and I'm still raped. Okay, it goes on in Catholicism, and I think once you start raising the woo, spooky woo woo, people just go, that's a lame film, it's just like a film, isn't it? I'm not going to accept that, that's not credible information, it's fictional. And I just think you've got to be, that for me, in terms of recovering, that's the woo-woo end of things. They don't help me recover. They don't help protect a child. Okay?
But I think that's why we're dealing with all the aspects of the abuse. We're dealing with child snatching is abuse. Legal family court for emotion incidents, typically innocent children. The full adoption of innocent children. The child sexual abuse. Yeah, the child sexual abuse, okay, what some people might call normal. The fact is, there's no such thing as normal child sexual abuse. It is all the time, really. It is because it's coming from a subversion of the understanding of the rights of the child. Any society that cannot protect its children and love its children, you're doomed. We're doomed. And that's why I say things will change when people realise austerity is a future emotional risk to every child in Britain. So, if you can take a child off a mother because she's depressed, okay, well, why don't we just take the woman? And like I say, Iceland did it. They all stood outside their MPs' homes. And why is that? Because Iceland has got a media that informs the people and says, we're not going to put up with this. But Britain doesn't hear those voices. We hear the BBC watering everything down. We see the media distracting us with ISIS. You know, we have to wake up, and we do. Get outside our MPs' homes. You know what I mean? Get outside them. That's what Iceland did. Banging pots and pans outside every MP's home. And that is why their government collapsed. Because they knew, their media told them straight away, you're going to lose everything you've got. Okay? We were told, oh, we've got to pay the banks, otherwise you're not going to get your money out of Northern Ireland. You see what I mean? Yeah, and that is why we've got to wake up, and they keep us from sense to crest. Because this country rides off us, it's infecting every nation. You know, look at the support of Israel and what Israel's doing. I mean, I've got nothing against Jewish people, but like every country, the worst people are in control of it. You know what I mean? So we do have to wake up. It's not just our children, it's children all over the world are coming into London, thousands from all over the world, being murdered and abused. That's what they're being brought in for. Like, they bring animals in to eat. We have to stop it. We do have to stop it. And we do have to believe that, yes, we can do it. And I do have faith in the British people. Because I know my gran and I know my nana. And I tell you now, if they were alive today, oh my gosh, you know, tell me how much we have been banged on the head. It's time to wake up.
Okay, so could I just quickly propose that we have a mission from today that we're going to map out on a global map where these secret societies are still practicing satanic rituals on babies and children, and we'll put them on a global map with an intent to wipe it out as soon as possible. We're not waiting on India to do it. We got technology. If we get everyone together, if we get enough people to help with this mission, we can do it within weeks. Because once the spotlight is on them, they will stop until they can carry on by kidnapping us. You know, we don't need to be demonstrating. We can do much more on a website.
I think I would just like to have the opposite of a minute's silence, or whatever one might have when one's feeling thoughtful or respectful or paying homage in any way, and have a few minutes chat. This is as suggested by Sabine. We should just end by greeting our neighbour and saying something nice to each other wherever we are in the room. And then I will end the not very much else to say, except that there is an event coming up on the 23rd of April. Seems a long time. 23rd of April 2016 at the Resource Centre in the Holloway Road with Miss Maggie's next conference.
For abuse victims.
For abuse
Victims of abuse.
Abuse. So
yeah, but we have a lot of very, very tough speakers there. Very good.
Anyway, put April in your diaries. I think before then, it would be nice to have another meeting rather like this, you know, because it seems to have stirred a lot of very interesting discussion, and very sort of, there's some very well-informed people in this room, I believe, from personal experience, and also they've done research. I think the world does need to start a conversation about all these issues. So if we kicked off something here today, I think we should be pleased and try and keep the momentum going. Yes, Mary?
Yeah, well, if I can just reinforce what you just said, because you took the words out of my mouth.
Oh.
I wasn't going to speak.
This is Marion.
As you know, I wasn't going to speak, but
no, well,
I was just going to reinforce what you just said. Strength in numbers. I live in a part of the UK, and I lived for 20 years. I lived for 20 years, not far from Kidwelly. and I am researching that, but I can't comment on it today. But when you look at what happened in Kidwelly is only a small village, but it's got status of a town. But when you look at how widespread the amount of people who came from across the UK to live in Kidwelly, and they were using the housing associations to exchange properties to come to that quiet little cul-de-sac in a remote little town. But for us, as we brought up in that area, we call it the paedophile playground. We always have. Strange things born in late boys in Comanche, but that's beside the point. But this is what we're saying. Crime is acceptable, but it's a crime to report it or question it. And I found out to my expense. I'm a whistleblower, but I'm paranoid, delusional, and in need of sectioning. And this is what happens if people speak out and ask questions. A friend of mine, he was sectioned simply because we questioned the meat industry in West Wales. He was taken down to the police station. There's a psychologist there, put in a police car, and fortunately he was a smoker, so the little quash, the liquid quash, and the medicine that was given to help him, he was able to go for a cigarette and spit it out. But there were 30 phone calls going into that ward every day to make sure that that man was okay. And those phone calls were coming from across the world. But the point I'm going with very briefly, I've just made a couple of notes. Coming back to Kidwelly, what we had in that area was a chief constable called Terry Grange. Now, if anybody has research on Terry Grange, now he was the one that was working with Jack Straw to try and pass it in Parliament. Okay, I don't need to expand on it. But wherever you go and people talk about paedophiles, even in Kent, Terry Grange's name comes up. This paedophile ring in Spain, Terry Grange comes up. That man was on my doorstep. And when somebody went into that house, yes, there was police helicopters, it was like a scene of MASH. But yes, they got somebody else, his house was on the market, and somebody went to see it and wanted to buy it. But when that person realised that it was at Terry Grange's house, she decided to stay there. But all the armed police, they weren't interested in getting her out of the house, but it was the 4 boxes that was underneath the table in his kitchen. But I'm not going to expand on that because I hope, I'm filmed. But that is something I'm really prepared to talk about in the future. Bridgend. Well, you're only going to read about what's happening in Bridgend when you read the story of Maurice Kirk, the flying vet. What happened to him? What was in that box underneath the bed in Caswell Clinic? Okay, so I'm mentioning Caswell. I can't expand on it because obviously, I don't want to spend, the next few nights in the police cell, that was another little thing. Yeah, now this is what you're going to think of. In the Kidwelly area, Carmarthenshire, this is where MAPA came from. So, I'm not going to expand on that in this meeting, but hopefully I can expand on that again. But you need to look up at MAPA. These are the elite people, or they think they are elite, that sit behind the scenes, and these were the ones who gave the clearance for Maurice Kirk to be shot on the streets of South Wales. Now, I was supposed to have been on MAPA, but now, because we discovered about MAPA and who was on MAPA, suddenly I'm not on MAPA. But
could you explain what MAPA is?
MAPA, does anybody? It's a multi-agency, and if you look up your individual police forces, just do MAPA. Now, more and more of these police forces won't release who's sitting on them. But South Wales Police have still got it up there, and Dyfed Powys have still got it up there. And you will see the calibre of these people. They're job centre plus, housing officers, the people who work for various medical boards, whatever. I'll let you draw your own conclusions from it, but it's a good little bit of research.
Did you start over the J?
Sorry?
Did you start over the J because you're the punchline? I was the subject of a MAPA meeting in 2013.
It's frightening stuff.
Yeah, I didn't realise until after so.
It's frightening stuff. And of course, when you're a whistleblower and your name goes down in the black book and you go on the benefit system, I lost everything. I lived for 6 months on £20.70 a week. That's what they do to whistleblowers. But then when you compare what happened to me to the likes of Brian Peed and other whistleblowers across the country, I was lucky. So I'm on my way out of it. So that's why I'm very cautious of what I say, because I'm doing a lot of research at the moment. So I'm here to do jigsaws. So I wasn't here to speak, but I feel I got to, because a number of things have been raised tonight and I wanted to share that with you.
So what area are you whistleblowing? Is it in the child section?
No, I whistleblowed in Swansea, the city and county of Swansea, for that authority. And what I saw, and the foolish thing I did, I asked for a transfer and I made a complaint. But again, as a Welsh speaker, you know, you're not supposed to speak your own language in a public authority building. But at the end of the day, yes, I whistleblowed and I saw things, and I've shared a bit of information today. Where do you start? Now, I don't want to go on, but I'll share with one point. Freemasonry. Now, I'm not going to attack Freemasonry because some good people in Freemasonry. But where do you start? You start with a melon, you start with the chicken, you start with a live chicken, you start with an octopus. Now, where do you go? Okay, I'm not going to expand on it, but obviously, if you're going up the degree scales, which will take you far further than academic scales, and will take you into areas what we've been discussing today. But you need the evidence, you need somebody to take photographs. And the photographs that I saw, you know, even an octopus can take things quite... You know, what I saw being done to an octopus, I can only imagine, you know, what's being discussed here today. So it's got to start somewhere. So, and the only other thing I'm going with is, where do we go next? Yes, things like this. You've got to stick together. There was, you know, sort of, it's this tool that they got against us. Here's the sectioning tool. That's been, and the only other thing, yeah, the precedence has been made with the Royal Commission on New South Wales. Now, there are people, and I mentioned Peter Oakes, because he's worked quite hard on this and trying to push this through. So, 105 MPs have signed up. So, this is what I'm saying. Let's go back, let's go wait on the MPs. My MP, okay, I'm not going to comment on that. But what I like to use is Section 5, lawful excuse. So I'm not going to, it wouldn't be right for me to put ideas in your mind, but have a look at that. Go into the CPS site, look at lawful excuse. Now, a lot of people are getting away with things, and a great man that I admired cost £60,000 on a council building, and, well, you can double that with the damage of the rain coming through the roof, and he walked free because he had a lawful excuse. So there's things happening to our children. Now, do we have a lawful excuse to protect our children? I've got my own view on this, and it's going through at the moment. You know, my child was bullied. The minute the child gets bullied, doesn't go to school, Raider, the child snatcher, which is in every school, goes to the social services, social workers come in, all of a sudden, yeah, the shifting of blame comes from away from the child, because the parent is exaggerating, So the shifting of blame goes on the parent. So it's just little things, you know, that I've experienced, and I will talk in greater detail, but at the moment these things are going on. So bear with me that I can't go down to the hard facts and how I'm going to resolve it, because I've got to go ongoing at the moment. But all I'm trying to do is share some ideas with you of what a few of us are trying to get together in West Wales. And the problem that we've got is not enough groups across the country are talking to each other. So talk to each other, and this is the way forward. I might not be able to... Sorry. Oh, sorry, I thought you wanted to ask me something. But that's where I sort of leave it, I'm afraid.
Linda, can I just say one? I mean, this kind of food for thought. It's actually regarding the comments. If we think of, yeah, just food for thought. It's just probably just to finalize what just was told and what you said about Britain, and that's in relation to the worldwide policy. I come from Soviet Union, ex-Soviet Union, my country. What happened, being divided, being affected by policies of Britain, by Thatcher and America. That's on political level. And if we remember the rule of Great Britain, divide and rule, and what's happening on every level, the societies, the communities, the countries are divided because they know when they divide the people, it's easy for them to rule. They divide communities, and we should understand that, and we should unite. People should unite, communities should get together. We need to communicate. We need to get together because there are so many groups fighting. Yeah, and from my personal experience, my fight is psychiatry, basically. And exactly the same corrupt system as child abuse and all that. So we need to kind of to get together, we need to understand what are we facing in here, and communities really need to get stronger. We will win. I believe in that.
Okay, can I issue one last challenge to this new community that we have become here tonight, and I hope we will continue to meet. There's a lady in this room who's about to lose 6 children to Enfield Council. Right? 6 children. And I want this to go out everywhere, online. This lady in this